Investing is all about understanding the asset you are putting your money into. For some insight into how we should be investing in this challenging environment, I'm joined in the studio by the CEO of Wholesale Investor, Steve Torso, and Domenic Carosa from Dominet. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
G'day. Thanks,
I think the starting point, Steve, would be for you to explain what Wholesale Investor is all about.
Well, Wholesale Investor, it's a matchmaking service that connects high net worth investors with private and pre-IPO companies. So generally you find high net worth investors, they've got their traditional portfolio of companies they invest in that are ASX listed, but they also have a bit of a risk appetite where they've got side investments which they want to invest into private companies, which one day could either be listed on the ASX or sold to a listed company.
So rather than going through a publicly listed company to get to the business, you go directly to the business and you might take a 10% stake in a fledgling company that one day might become a seeker or what if or whatever.
Correct.
Yeah.
And what they're really looking for is when investors invest into these private companies, they're looking to be directly involved and add their skills, add their knowledge, add their networks to those companies. So it's not just about investing and seeing what happens with the company, it's about adding value to it as well. So
how do you get the product to sell to those investors?
Well, generally, you find because Wholesale Investors distributes now to 10,900 sort of high net worth professional investors. So
you've got sort of a database of potential investors?
Correct. And when you've got a database of potential investors, the companies often will sort you out and find you. And essentially our role is to then, promote them and connect them together and let them, obviously work, negotiate a deal together.
Yeah. So Dom, you've been on the program before. You've created businesses, you invest in businesses. What are you doing here?
Good question, Peter. I actually am now an investor in Wholesale Investor.
So you reckon that this business was worthwhile investing in?
Yeah, well, I actually... part of our fund called Future Capital, we go out there and look for companies, internet companies to invest into. And I actually used Wholesale Investor as a way to get access to a bigger investor base. It worked so well that I then bought a stake in the company.
So the Victor Kiam, the Remington commercial, you like the business so much you bought into it?
I bought into it. Yeah. And I've actually also have been using Wholesale Investor as deal flow. There has been 3 deals that have basically been promoted through Wholesale Investor. I've had a look at it. So from an investor's perspective, rather than me having to churn through the internet, having a look at opportunities, I can go to one source on the actual website, have a look at all the companies that fit my profile, and that's internet, and invest. In the last couple of quarters, we've just completed 3 deals.
So you are basically an online business?
No, we're actually a physical magazine as well. Yeah. The magazine gets distributed, but there's also an online component. Yeah.
And so are you an alternative to going to a venture capitalist or a private equity company and saying, well, I've got a business here, I'm looking for money?
It's a great question, and we get asked a lot.
That's what I get paid for.
The challenge with venture capital in Australia really isn't as people understand venture capital in the US, where venture capital in Australia, they're traditionally looking for companies with good, strong earnings, good, strong growth patterns, where private investors, what we've seen really is there's a new breed of venture capital, and they're actually more like Domenic. So what they are...
So the old ones are a lot tougher to impress.
Correct.
Harder to get money out of.
Correct.
Okay. So your channel is going to be for those sort of people who may well have been unfairly KO'd by the tough guys in vulture capitalism.
I was going to say there's a lot of them because from what I've seen, so there was only about 5 deals that were new deals that were invested into by venture capital firms last year.
Yeah.
And a lot of the money raised, actually a lot of it was actually contributed by the government. So the venture capital traditional funds are actually having quite a difficult time at the moment. But however, the high net worths and people that are at the top of their game are really active in this space because they see how they can add value to companies. It's not so much... They may see a good idea or a good company, but they see how they can go into that company and take its revenue maybe from $500,000 up to 10 million or up to 5 million or whatever it may be.
So, Domenic, why have you found this service so much better than other services such as you've invested in?
Well, all the companies are actually in the one place, so it's easy from an investor perspective. A Wholesale Investor actually goes through a process to weed out good companies versus bad companies. And I guess from our approach in terms of venture, we're not really a venture capitalist, we're not really an angel, we're kind of a cross in between. And I really see a new trend that I really call the venture accelerator, which in a way could be like a high net worth individual that puts cash into the company, but also provides their intellectual capital as part of a way to fund, to actually grow the company further.
And I guess what you've done with Steve's business is a case in point. You've not only given him money, has he given you any money?
Yes.
He has. It's just hard, he doesn't give money to many people. But he's also given expertise, and his expertise clearly is in the online world. Yeah. And so you are doing exactly what you presume other people want to do, get involved, get money involved, but also get their real input into the business.
Yeah, I think this is a new trend for investors where they basically put cash in, but then they roll up their sleeves and actually help grow that company. So they've got a direct influence as opposed to putting money into a managed fund and hoping for the best.
Is there a potential for conflict that the existing company wants the money but doesn't want the input? You must have had some examples of that.
Of course there is, because the challenge is with entrepreneurs is there's not much education in that area. But what sometimes people forget is if you bring in someone like Domenic, who's got 20 years experience in the area, has got 20 years, a lifetime of networks, a company can tap into that. So really it's more about conditioning and educating the companies that these kind of skill sets, bringing on smart money, as it's sort of called, is far more valuable than just money from someone who can't actually contribute and add value to the business.
Steve, have you had a business, what's been your biggest success story so far?
One of the best success stories is a company called Cubiotics, which was it's a cancer drugs basically out of the rainforest in Queensland. And that company, when they come to us, like biotech stream being traditionally quite difficult to raise money. So this company, they've raised 2 rounds of capital. They've raised $3 million last year, and they raised another $10 million earlier this year. And what's really interesting about that is they've now had successful trials in over 250 dogs and cats where they've actually injected the drug into a tumour. Pets were basically going to die. And they've had some really good success with those pets. And now they've raised that $10 million to actually move that into human trials.
Okay, let's play devil's advocate. It all sounds great. You're an entrepreneur. The glass is always half full. In fact, it's totally full. We just get a smaller glass, wouldn't we, to make sure it's full? That's the kind of people we are. The cautious person will say, is there scope for mistakes? And would you be held responsible if you tipped a private investor into a business that ultimately was either a shonk or just a hopeless business? Is this a worry for you?
First thing, it's absolutely mistakes get made. The second thing is, we're just a publisher. So we're simply just publishing the information which companies want to
So you're the messenger
provide.
who doesn't want to get shot?
Correct.
Right.
But in saying that, we're only targeting people which are smart enough to actually go and do their own due diligence on a deal. Now, typically from what we've surveyed, they'll take over half will take up to 4 months to go and do their due diligence on a company before they actually invest. Some will actually watch them for 6 months and just keep an eye on them before they even make a move to actually contact a company. So it's over to the investor to go and do their own due diligence, consult their own advisors on the company itself.
Dominic, do you think that there are potential traps in what sounds like a great idea? You know what the media can do if something fails. Do you think there's some traps because you invest in this business? You would have risk managed your investment.
Undoubtedly. I mean, for the unsophisticated investor, having direct equity investment may not actually make sense. And the sector that we've targeted are what we call sophisticated investors. They're typically entrepreneurs and CEOs who have been there and have done it before, have made money, and actually want to add not only capital to a new company, but also their expertise. And as Steve was saying, in my view, smart money is worth 3 or 4 times as much as dumb money.
But why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Why? Because I mean, I'll just give you an example. Our fund called Future Capital, I've got a number of high net worth individuals who I would classify as smart money, and literally on a maybe not on a daily basis, but on a weekly basis, I'd call them up and seek their counsel on a specific area. Or if I need to be introduced to someone, I make a call and then they'll make that introduction.
And the network value is extraordinarily important, isn't it?
It's a combination of the network value as well as the intellectual capital. I call it the grey hair effect.
Or the bald head effect.
Or the bald head effect. That, to me, in my view, over the last 20 years, that is actually worth more than the actual dollars.
Yeah, and you made one other point, Steve, that I want to take you up on, and that was the subject of networks. Have you found that once you've got some success, that the networks then start bringing more people to your organisation?
Without a doubt. Like, as a company grows, you find there's more and more people on the fringes of that company watching what they're doing, seeing what they're doing. And sometimes a company may not even be raising capital, but they will have potential investors watching what they're doing. So really, for high-growth companies, what they should be doing is creating a corporate sort of news trail for themselves, just like ASX companies do.
Yeah. It certainly is a great idea. Is there any other information or insights that we haven't talked about so far that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
The only other thing to say is that every quarter we conduct a survey on our investors as far as what they're looking to invest into. So if people are interested in finding out more about the private space, they should definitely go to our website and just have a look around and get a bit more understanding and knowledge about the area, because part of our magazine is it also is a bit of an education tool as well.
I guess the interesting question would be, what's the minimal amount that a person can invest in these sorts of businesses?
That's depending on the investor. The reality is they can invest as little as $50,000 or they can invest as much as $10 million. It really depends on the investor, it depends on the deal, and it depends on what they're looking to achieve from that investment.
I've got to say, over the years, I've talked to lots of successful people who created great businesses, and for example, Paul Cave, who started Bridgeclimb. Now, behind him, he was backed by the likes of Jack Cowan, Brett Blundy, entrepreneurs, very much what you're talking about here, done in an informal kind of way, and that's what a lot of businesses lack, this informal and really influential network that make things happen. Guys, thanks for coming on the program. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Okay.